Hello and welcome everyone, it is me, TheLaval, also known as the Power Tool Duelist, back for you with another video and another episode of Straight Out of the Toolbox. I hope you all had a very nice Christmas Eve. I'm only myself getting to record this rather late. You got the gifts you wanted, and on the topic of Christmas, cause just like Santa Claus, this deck is very fabled, cause we are looking at fables today. I've finally given this deck the final touches and gotten over my kind of inner blockade of not doing a deck profile with OCG marked cards, but this deck has been laying around for a while, and the decks I am also working on in the form of Mecha Phantomies and Evil Swarm are not wanting to work the way I want them to work. So yeah, let's get into it. Starting off, the main deck are 3 Fabled Grimrows. If you control a face-up Fabled monster, you can discard it from your hand, or you send it from your hand to the grave, to add a Fabled monster from your deck to your hand, except herself, which gets especially good in combination with Cruise. But yeah, the first of the OCG marked cards in this deck, Fabled Marcosia. All of these cards that you see with the OCG marking will be released at the end of February in Blazing Vortex. But back to Marcosia, if he is in your hand, you can discard up to 2 monsters, including at least a Fabled monster, except himself. And if you do, you special summon him. And if you do that, he gains 200 for each monster discarded. And if he is discarded, you add a Fabled spell or trap from your deck to your hand. Which is definitely neat. Discarding 2, special summoning him, especially those 2 discards can definitely trigger a lot of your Fabled effects, because a lot of the Fabled effects work with discarding cards, or if they get discarded, which is kinda similar to Dark Worlds, but it's also not, because some of these effects even trigger if they get discarded for costs, I think. So yeah, next one is the Fabled Ganashia, also 3 of. When this card is discarded to the graveyard, you special summon it, and if this card is special summoned that way, it gains 200 attack for each, and is removed from play when it's removed from the field. Great card. Again, all of the cards that basically say, if this card is discarded, special summon it, are things you want to definitely run in this deck, because you do have an awful lot of ways to discard. Then 1 Fabled Kushano. This is just basically a third does something in the graveyard kind of card, in addition to the 2A Fang you run. You can discard a Fabled monster from your hand and accept himself to add him to your hand. He's a level 3 tuner, so he does give you some rather nice synchro options. But you most likely will resort to normal summoning him, but that's not really the problem, because you do rarely need your normal summon in this deck. Then we have 2 Fabled Nozuchi. During your main phase, discard a Fabled and special summon him. If he's special summoned that way, you can special summon 1 level 2 or lower Fabled monster from your hand. 3 Fabled Cruise. If she is discarded to the graveyard, you can select a level 4 or lower Fabled monster in your graveyard, except herself, to special summon. As mentioned, discarding Grimrow for her effect, adding Cruise. Cruise gets discarded, summons back Grimrow. Is definitely very neat. Then we have 2 the Fabled A-Fang. If he is in your grave, you can discard a Fabled to special summon him, but he gets banished when he leaves the field, and that effect is hard once per turn. Then a returning phase from the Malfi episode, the Fabled Cabaret. If he's discarded to the graveyard, special summon him. Easy as that, very good card. Next up, Fabled Lurie. Same story. When she's discarded to the graveyard, special summon her. Easy as that, and very good for the deck. Capping off the monster lineup, 2 Fabled Shower. During your main phase, you can discard 1 Fabled monster and special summon this card from your hand. Just a neat way to maybe trigger all of your discard effects, and also put a level 1 tuner on the board, which does help the deck a lot. Then we have the 1/1 for 1, maybe get out a Chawa or a Lurry, depending on what you need at that point in time. And then we have 3 Pot of Avarice. Target 5 monsters in your grave, shuffle our 5 back, draw 2 cards. Most of your Fables don't have that good graveyard effects. Afang and Kushano are your only ones, or the only good ones, I suppose. So you do not really lose out on much if you shuffle back your monsters to draw 2, because those 2 cards in your hand can result in further plays. Maybe drawing Marcosia, seeing a Grimrose, seeing anything that lets you continue your plays. So this is why I think Pot of Avarice definitely is a rather good card in Fables. You can also work with Dark World dealings. I've tested with that and it is not that bad, but I think Pot of Avarice in general does more for the deck. 1 Terraforming to grab our field spell. The 1 Foolish Burial to send Afang and Kushano to the grave, just separately, so just a separate way from our field spell. The 1 Monster Reborn to revive some stuff, because especially Andraith has a very nice effect when special summoned. Then 1 new card, I think this got released in Phantom Rage. Charge into a Dark World. Target a level 4 lower Fiend in your grave, special summon it, then discard 1 Fiend monster. An awful lot of your Fables are Fiend type monsters, which is something you definitely need to remember when playing this deck, because a lot of the not only Dark World but also just generic Fiend cards can work with this. Seeing Grimrose is a Fiend, Marcosia is a Fiend, Kushano is a Fiend, Cruz is a Fiend, and also Lurry is a Fiend. Most of the Fables anyway are Fiends and or Beasts. So this is a great card. Works great in Dark Worlds and also great in this. As mentioned, Dark World does have some incidental synergy with this deck. Haven't really looked into builds that combine the two, but I think the two are too mutually exclusive to really mix them. Then we have 3 of the field spells, Stairway to the Fabled World. When this card is activated, send a Fabled monster from your deck to the graveyard. As mentioned, mostly want to send Afang or Kushano, depending on what you need. Also, you can target a Fabled monster in your graveyard to discard 2, and if you do, add the target to your hand. Doesn't really come up. Discarding 2 just to add back 1 Fabled doesn't really come up. And the third and last effect also is nothing to write home about, because if your Fabled monster attacks an opponent's monster while you have less cards in your hand than your opponent, it gains attack equal to the difference between the number of cards in the hands times 200 during damage calc only. That boost can get quite nice, especially if you're going second. But in most cases, seeing as how modern Yu-Gi-Oh works, you will end up with maybe 200 at best, if your opponent hasn't ditched his 1 or 2 last cards in hand as hand traps. But yeah, in general the first effect is nice. Sending Fables from your deck to the graveyard is why you wanna see and run this card. Then capping off the main deck are 3 Fabled Regicide. Target a Fabled monster in your graveyard and 1 face-up card on the field. Discard a card, and if you do, special summon the monster from your grave, and if you do that, destroy the other card on the field. You can only activate 1 Fabled Regicide per turn. Great card. Not only is this probably your main interruption, just ignoring generic extra deck stuff, but it's also a neat way to revive some of your Fables. Not only main deck monsters that you might need for synchro summons and all that good stuff, but also maybe Andraith or anything else that has a good effect on summon. Going into the extra deck now, we have Fabled Leviathan. Fun fact, one of my all-time favorite synchro monsters. Just because I do like his artwork a lot, and also because his effect, or summoning condition first. 1 Fabled Tuner and 1 or more non-tuner monsters. All Fabled Synchro monsters share this summoning condition, which makes them rather easy to make, to be honest. When he on the field is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you can select up to 3 Fabled monsters in your graveyard, add them to your hand. Great effect. Most likely not what you want to see on your boss monster, but I still think he is very cool because he continuously lets you replenish your resources if you decide to also add him back. I probably won't go over generic stuff like this crystal wing here, because just like in many other episodes, the extra deck is very up to preference, and I do like running all the archetypal stuff if possible. Then we have one Fabled Valkyrus. He's a level 8, that same summoning condition as Leviathan. He lets you once per turn discard a fiend to draw another card. He's basically Dark World Dealings on legs, which is why I do think that Dark World Dealings is definitely something you can test with. Let me just quickly on the side, let me add that to the side here. So I have a nice 10 cards in the side deck. As mentioned, generic stuff again. Valkyros is great, by the way. Just to round him out, he definitely is a great card and sometimes a good level 8 to make. Yeah, generic good stuff. Then, as mentioned a couple of times already, Fabled and Wraith. He's a level 6, and if he is special summoned, you can activate this effect, which your opponent can negate by discarding a card. Otherwise, if he does not negate, you draw 2 and discard 1. Also, if a monster is sent from your opponent's hand to the grave, except during the damage step, target one of those monsters, special summon it to your field, but negate its effects. Really funny against hand trap heavy decks, I can only imagine. But also, if your opponent is forced to discard a monster for negating that effect, you also can steal that monster, which is kind of funny. But yeah, he's great, can net you some more advantage, puts your opponent in a spot where he has to get rid of cards from his hand. But looking at modern day Yu-Gi-Oh, he probably will profit from that, as there are a lot of prevalent graveyards affecting the game. But as mentioned, if he decides or just misreads the card, you can definitely steal a couple of monsters with that. Bryonek, just generic stuff again, and then one of the probably coolest synchro monsters of all time. I do like this deck a lot. Fabled Regine. One Fabled Tuner or one or more non-tuner monsters. If he is synchro summoned and you have one or less cards in your hand, you can draw until you have 2 cards in your hand. This guy is able to let you extend your combos so much. I think one replay, just as a spoiler alert, I do make 2 of this guy during the combo, and because of that I end up making like 4 synchros at the end of my turn, which is rather nice, to be honest. So yeah, he is definitely a really cool guy. Then another returning phrase from the Melfi video, the Fabled Unicorn. Fabled Tuner, one of my non-tuner, and while you and your opponent have the same number of cards in hand, negate all spell trap and effect monster effects activated by your opponent, and also destroy the destroy that card, which is great. Unicorn locking your opponent is something that is a strategy / win condition for Melfi, and in this deck it is just as effective. Just being locked out of every card type imaginable. Think about VFD, that card currently being probably one of the strongest cards in the current metagame, and that just locks you out of monster effects for a turn. This guy locks you out of everything. So yeah, setting him up is quite fun, but being on the other side is not fun. So yeah, capping off the synchro lineup, another returning phase from the Malfi video, the Fabled Kudabi. Just, if you have 0 cards in your hand, can't be destroyed by battle or card effects, which is nice, I guess. You sometimes are able to stall out a bit with him, but in general, you will be able to make better things. Yeah. Maybe run more links than I do. The nightmares are quite nice, or just any good generic links. The Link Horibo, definitely worthwhile, because Lurie does hit the field rather often. Or just if you have a straight shower laying around, turning that into a Link Horibo can be rather helpful. I've talked about Dark World synergies, but dangers are obviously another big point. Any of these are probably fine, as the dangers probably help out every deck imaginable if you run them in that. Well, for a few examples maybe, but in general, dangers do help a lot. Just being able to put non-tuner buddies on the board to maybe get faster to your Fabled Synchros or just any other Synchro is definitely something you can consider. One that probably shines in this deck more than in most other builds, Chupacabra, just because it's a fiend, and as mentioned, the Dark World Reinforcements is a rather nice card in this deck, and also it would be another target for Valkyrie's effect. So yeah, we got those dangers out of the way. And as mentioned, Dark World dealings, maybe experiment with that. I don't know if a Fabled Dark World variant is really a thing, because I have not looked into that, and Dark World really isn't my cup of tea. I do like Fabled a lot more there, but maybe experiment with that. And on that note, I will switch over real quick and see you guys when we get into the replays. Here we are, just to see maybe some basic plays or lines of play you have as options with this deck. I mostly prefer to go second with this deck because that extra card really can help you a lot, and this hand is already looking very nice. I end up setting the Monster Reborn and the Regicide because, as you probably know, Ragin lets you draw if you have one or less cards in hand until you have two, which is why I'm getting rid of the field spell here, just to get another draw of Ragin. Activate the Grimrow, grab Cruise, discard that with Marcosia to summon back Grimrow, go into Endwraith, which gets quickly met with a negate going into that Cyber's Quant, and this was the replay I mentioned. I just went through two Regines maybe and just was able to make a good bit of synchros there and go for the OTK. But yeah, those draws within your combo really come in handy. And this is probably why I do think that Pot of Avarice does help the deck a lot. I do end up making Endwraith here. Cannot retrieve the Dotscaper. Summoning back Marcosia, Cruise effect, getting back Cerberus, making a Crystal Wing, because I think I was going first there, just to have some sort of monster negate. Yeah, activating the Regicide here, summoning back Endwraith, Cruise effect, Endwraith effect, he will torrential me. Endwraith will get negated because he discards, and I do have the Cerberus to back it up. But yeah, at this point, I got board wiped, which is of course unfortunate. I am able to summon back the Endwraith with the top deck Monster Reborn to get me into further plays, activating the Avarice here to replenish my resources a bit, activating Grimrow, grabbing the Cerberus, and I just end up, because he does not have cards in hand, I make the Unicorn to just guarantee myself getting the damage in, which is rather neat. He draws for turn and he will flip in my standby phase the Compulse, which is probably the most vulnerable point for these Unicorn locks, but I think with a bit of luck and as mentioned, or just not as mentioned, in a very casual setting, you can have a lot of fun with Fables. This hand also looks really good. Stairway to the Fabled World here, drawing the Grimrow for turn, which is very neat. Getting the Anfact effect here. Grimrow, grabbing the Ganache here. I don't know why I grabbed the Ganache here, to be honest. Oh, and yeah, this was a list in which I ran Formula Synchron at that time. Would not really recommend it. It's a nice extra draw, to be honest, but making it is way too inconsistent and definitely not worth it. I just go for Regicide, targeting the Honeybot here. I don't know, I go for Regine instead of the Valkyries I had engraved, but we don't judge misplays here. He's able to get in some damage. As mentioned, this probably not as mentioned, but this deck is very frail. Um, but that's probably the thing with a lot of the decks that I really enjoy playing because they are not really that competitive, but I just like the deck. Um, in most cases, you will lose to a single or maybe one or two hand traps. Um, yeah, Grimrow effect here going off. Kushano, Cruz, goes in the grave, summons the Grimrow, then Kushano, make Rogin with the Nozuchi, getting the Cerberus off, making an Andraith, and this is just playing with your food essentially, so yeah. You can definitely go into some rather sick combos. Just remember to use your draws, like Regine, to full extent, just like I did, setting maybe a field spell or just setting cards you have in hand that you might be able to activate later, um, is very helpful because every card you draw or every Fabled you get into your hand is something that is able to let you continue your plays and continue making synchros. So yeah, this has been it with Fables. Maybe take your own look at this deck and have some fun with it against your friends. Um, but yeah, I will probably see you guys on Tuesday with a small video, just Morphtronics Monthly basically. Um, maybe talking about just a few things that maybe channel related, because I do have some things I wanna get onto at the beginning of next year and some things I want to change in the upload schedule and all that. Um, but I'll get to that on Tuesday in depth. So yeah, I will thank you guys very much for watching. Um, and I will see you guys again next time. But after then, goodbye.